Hi, everyone. I'm Alexander Fernandez, and welcome to Video Games Real Talk, a show that deep dives into the business of video games and speaks to the visionaries, developers, and publishers making today's great video game hits and indie developments. We have a special episode this week with Bilge Yumurta discussing her experience coming up in the world of digital distribution, what it was like in the early 2000s as the entire concept of digital distribution began to take shape in software technology, then ultimately leading her into the video games industry, as well as the future of enterprise video games and where she sees video games technology taking global brands and enterprise in general. Bilga, how you doing? How are you?
Hi, Alexander. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, Bilga, you know what? We have known each other forever. That's what I always say. It's like it feels like forever. It feels like my entire adult life, which, depending on who you talk to, it's either been 5 years or it's been 40 years, depending on which way you look at it and define being an adult. For those of you out in the audience that don't know Bilga, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. And, Bilga, who are you? What do you do? Like, help us understand you.
Of course, Alexander. My name is Bilge Yumurta. I work right now in a company called Qualtrics. We are focusing on experience management. Experience management is, an area I will explain later, which is a very cool technology. And I've been in video games since 2005, and that's actually when we met. Actually, I met you at my very, very first show in Sweden, in Malmo. Was it Malmo, Alexander?
I actually just got the flashback. It was at the food table. I'm visually seeing these like have the tables all the way around, and it was, you know what? It was that when the IKEA Future Fantastic look was out, everything was like white and everything was white. I just remember it being very white, like Elysium white. I don't know. I mean, am I wrong here or what?
Weird enough, I remember that moment as well because I was quite scared when he just walked towards me and I was like, okay, hopefully he passes and then just stopped talking. And I was like, oh my God. And then, yeah, and here we are 16 years later, Alexander.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's like that's kind of scary when I think about it. It's like, you know what? I randomly started talking to you at a trade show in front of food. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that really does sound like me. Food and conversation. Let's go, So, Bilga, you know what? You were and you have been in video games for a long time, and now you're doing basically experiential marketing. You know what? I do want to talk about, all of the things that got you to where you are today, but let's go through the journey of you because you're an economist by study. So, I mean, I think this is something that I'm always amazed because I remember when we started talking, you're like, "Yeah, I'm an economist." I'm like, "What?" Because
Correct.
I'm an uneducated person, so I'm like, "Wow, there's actually someone with like real studies in video games." So, how, how did you fall in with the wild crowd? Where did you go so wrong, dear? How did that happen that you fell into the video games industry? What's your story?
Let me tell you that how that happened actually. Yeah, I'm an economist, and I had to study and I had to make money. I had to kind of survive, through life. So I decided to go into technology. At that time, in Germany, I grew up in Germany. There were not a lot of people speaking English and German and understand a little bit of technology. So I actually started working in the German startup, started in customer service, trying to survive through my student life. And that company actually got acquired by an American NASDAQ company called Digital River. And from there on, I started actually my career in technology. So I started doing customer service, talking to people and helping them out. And at that time, Alexander, we were delivering software keys. So that was like you have a piece of software, you get a code to unlock it, and people were just not able to put it in there. So that was pretty much my job. And but there was so much more to it. It was about the digital distribution. We were the first companies doing digital distribution, which was like, oh my god, crazy! We can send digital stuff digitally.
Yeah, that's huge. Bilga, take us back to this because this is 2004, 2005?
2000 actually. In 2001, I started that.
What do you mean there was no digital What are you talking about? I've always been able to buy things online. Remember, there's some people here that were born in 2000.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, it was actually the year 2000. I mean, it was 3 years ago I started to use emails professionally in Germany. Just to be clear, I was working with a consultancy company, and using email was already like, oh my god. And then I went over to this company, Alexander, and they were thinking that digital products can be shipped digitally. And that was like, oh no, this can't be true. We can't, cannibalize our channels, our retailers. We are not going to ship this piece of software digitally. So there was a lot of convincing going on and helping people out. So actually, Microsoft, guess what, was one of the first companies working with Digital River at that time, even earlier. So we were talking to a lot of software companies, especially antivirus. Antivirus was quite big, Alexander. And you might remember companies like Clone CD. So we were helping companies actually to rewire and think that yes, you can send digital products digitally by a code, or you send us a piece of software. And we were really helping companies to understand that there is a digital market and it's real. And if you just don't do that, you'll be out of business. So as I said, it was a big discussion with a lot of companies. So we were working with antivirus, which was a very key piece of that industry. And we were helping them to create e-stores, e-commerce storefronts, and help them to create a branding and have a speech to their customer. And that actually evolved quite nicely. So from the customer service I started on, and after the acquisition of Digital River, I went over to the product management. I wanted to learn more. I was an economist. I was good in numbers. I could, bring the dots together. And I love the product management side of business, how to run a platform and make a platform evolve over time, because it is software as a service. It's a service we are providing. We are providing the storefront. We are providing backend technology. We're making sure that everything is shipped correctly, payment processing, languages. And we just figured that this is a massive field. You cannot just decide to send a product to Russia. There are so many pieces of localization, so many pieces of payments. It's not that it's digital and you can just ship worldwide. That was not possible. So we had to find ways to get into the market. We had to understand the processes. We had to understand, do you need an entity there? How can you sell digital goods in Brazil without having an entity? How do you make people pay if they don't have a credit card penetration? Because all of these trends were coming from the US, where you have a very mature market level. But the markets they wanted to conquer without retail online were just so specific. So to run a global e-store was the thing in the 2000s. You were a rock star when your products were available all over the world. So my job was actually talking to the companies and ensure that we create the right strategy on the platform for them to reach a broader audience. And it is such a different world at that time. I will tell you one thing, even at that time, everyone said we want to be like Amazon, and you still hear it today, because people wanted to have a recommendation. So if you buy this, people who bought this piece, they bought the second piece. Our systems, our platforms were not able to process data. So we had to get Excel files and understand what was bought, what was not bought, and bring that together and push it to the storefront. Imagine the technology was not there. So from that point on, Alexander, around 2005, and I was a person which never found the right spot in her life at that time, because I was an economist, I was good in numbers, I was studying, I loved my studies. I was pretty much what you would call a geek or a nerd. And being in this IT tech company, everyone around me was like that. It was so much fun. I loved my job. I loved my colleagues. We were talking about games. We were playing games. We were just this big, massive family. And at one point, the company figured out that software is great, but there is another piece to it, software without a purpose, called video games. So the definition at that time of video games was software without a purpose.
Wait, you're literally in the department called software without a purpose. It's like watching Seinfeld, the show without a purpose. It's like, what in the world? Like, sounds like a translation of a German word. Like, is this like software without a purpose? What is that in German? Like, what do they call you guys? Like,
No, it was not a German word. It was really officially how they tried to explain video games to older people, to our management in that case. And the only way they could explain video games without sounding nerdy or geeky was software without a purpose. It sounded more corporate, I guess.
I mean, honestly, that's like, why not just say entertainment? I mean, it's like.
No, that's not business, Alexander.
That's true. You're right, actually.
Entertainment was no business at that time.
Oh my gosh. Wow, like, I'm kind of like I wow.
Yeah, yeah. So you see the reality I was facing there. And so they were looking, they saw. So something happened in that company, which was EA using Digital River for the EA Play Store. So the EA store was run by our company, and EA was super creative, very happy. We had, NFL running there, all the new games. It was so exciting, and our people also loved the video games company, especially EA, because it was so creative compared to software. Software, no one is hyped about the new Norton antivirus. I don't know people who stay awake for the launch date and just download the software and just like, oh my God, this is an exciting experience. No. Software without a purpose called games, but we don't want to name them games because that doesn't sound corporate or enterprisey enough. Anyway, so they were looking into games. They wanted to create the games division. So they looked around whom they can use for that. Who can sell this? Who can understand video games and technology? And then they looked down. At that time, I was a sales assistant. I was a sales assistant to the vice president of Europe and to our European CEO. And they were just like, oh, Bilge, do you play games? I know you play World of Warcraft, right? And you always talk to the guys. So, hey, we have a job for you. It's a sales manager in Europe. And we need you to bring video game companies. And I was like, Alexander, I was like, oh my God, this is the best part of my life. I was like, seriously? Seriously? And they were just like, yeah, here. So I was promoted to a sales manager with, I think, 25 or 26, overlooking revenues, overlooking the entire engagement, the entire experience with our companies. So I was giving a list of companies, and I was like, you don't need to give me a list. I know these companies, right? So my job was actually talking to every publisher and every studio out there. Hey, do you want to go digital? And I was so amazed because it's my hobby. And now I'm talking to them. Honestly, I think there were moments in my life when, especially when I met Ubisoft management, I was like really so excited. I was like a fanboy or a fangirl meeting her stars, and no one could understand that. No one could understand this fandom in our industry, in the video games industry. And I was able to talk to these people, understand their businesses, understand their game. We have a games knowledge which is 25 years old, which is, great. And in Germany, the video games industry is not big, as you know. It's mainly about France or UK. Germany is not big. So I'd never stayed in Germany. I was in France, I was in UK, I was in Poland, I was traveling all over the world to understand who are the key players. And we figured very, very fast. We're like, oh my God, yes, we can ship software, but shipping games, digital games, is a totally different topic. We have to enable our platform to do that. Because here's the thing, imagine, Alexander, it's the year 2006. I'm talking to one of the top publishers, and they're just like, we have a video game AAA title launch. So we need to ensure that you can deliver the game, the download, to the users at midnight. So it was a pure stress test for our entire network because we never had that. With the launch of a game, couple of thousand people downloading 8 gig games. We were so scared. This was the biggest stress test for our company. And we were talking about, oh my God, the broadband isn't there. So if they can download, we need download managers. We need technologies around the downloads. We need to have CDNs available. And, we were charging per gig. Nowadays, no one talks about 8 gig games. And by the way, you should charge per gig some money. No, that's not a discussion. But that was really the limitation at that time. And then you had, on the other hand, Steam, which was the marketplace for games. So we were convincing people you should go directly digital to your consumer because your consumer wants to engage with the brand. They want to engage with you. You should know about them. Because at that time, brands, yes, they know their top gamers, they know the communities, but there was no direct connection one to one. It was A, through the retailer, or B, through another page, or services like Steam. So companies kind of got there. They understood that they need to find a way to distribute digitally. But the issues we had to overcome, they were just crazy, Alexander. In-game monetization, Korea leading the entire online gaming market. So I had questions from my management. Why can't we just plug in a payment system into an MMORPG? I was like, well, there is something called virtual currency. There's an in-game economy. So
As you're talking, you literally just constructed the entire evolution of digital distribution from a nascent, wouldn't it be cool if we could just give someone a key and they could download software, to virtual currency, to basically distribution at midnight worldwide, push a button, go. And this didn't exist. None of it existed. So you're literally building it. I mean, like you said, 8 gigabyte file, we're charging by the gig. And, now it's like, we don't even think about that. It's like,
no,
you download that while pouring a cup of coffee. But I remember basically waiting like 3 hours for that file to
correct.
download. So, let me ask you this question, because like you said, you're a nerd, you're a geek. You find yourself as an economist in a world of technology, but your passion for games is always there. And then you get that breakout chance. They're like, hey, we think Bilga likes games. Bilga, go build this empire, and that's exactly when we met in '06. Now that yeah, this is perfect. They're like, go figure out this weird thing called software without a purpose. I literally think we
Correct.
should rename the games industry to that: software without purpose. That is
I'm with
actually,
you.
it's the greatest thing ever. I'm sure there are parents out there feeling totally like justified. See, even the business people knew this wasn't working.
Correct.
Well, no, they knew it was worth something. You just didn't know how to categorize it. So when you were there, like, take me through this for a second. You're sitting here as an economist witnessing digital economy, like the real digital economy. Like, you're saying everyone's like, oh, Amazon, we want to be Amazon. Amazon back, which is funny because like they're 25 years old. So this is basically when they're like 15 years old. They're like, I want to be these guys. Did you know already, from your vantage point, sitting there at the intersection, that this digital economy, digital distribution, especially games, that this would become what it is? I mean, did it, was that obvious to you,
Yes.
or?
So it was very obvious because in Germany, having access to games was not as easy as in the US or in other mature markets. Even Germany is considered a mature market, but with video games, we had also trouble and issue and connectivity and all of that. And there was one German company called Sipsoft. Do you remember them? Sipsoft, they did this.
Yeah, that
Ah,
was, oh my, yeah, totally.
what is their game? It was played in Brazil like crazy. They were using actually our platform, and we never understood how they made this revenue of a couple of hundred Ks all the time or millions in the meantime. And it was a legacy game, Alexander. If you would look at it, you would be just like, this is really played. And then we understood the following: because of the missing hardware in Brazil, they couldn't play all these new games. They didn't have access. They need to have other easier technology games to play them through. And it was an MMO. So we saw how a very small, tiny company in Germany with a very smart approach could generate all that revenue. And then we were looking at companies like EA when they had a launch. Our systems, we were just blown away. We never had that. We never had that product life cycle. And we never had so much people complaining about things like gamers. You know, um, I saw that coming because we were looking at Korea. We were looking at Korea. Like I grew up with the Sega Master System 2. That was my first own console, not the one of my brother, right? That was my own console. So we were always looking at Sega and all the market, all the Korean market, the Japanese market. And we know where they were in 2005 and 2006. Look at NCSoft. It was the graphics
Yeah,
aren't
exactly.
comparable. They're beautiful. It's MMO, open worlds. And then they had in game monetization, Alexander. And we were like, damn it, how do we get that? How does that work? And we figured actually we cannot serve the in game economy because there's so many layers to it. So you have your virtual economy, you have your experience points, then you have the virtual coins, which are redeemed as well. So it is really like an economy balancing. You act like the bank or like the government in the game because if you give too many coins, they will level up too fast. So you need to keep the game balanced and you need to understand everything. And you also need to find out if there is an issue, if there is a problem not thought through, that you block it. So there were so many pieces and bits to it, Alexander, that the company acquired a wallet system. The wallet system. The wallet means that you plug it into the game and you have accounts. So the player account, his credit card details, payment details are there, his history is there. And then forget about that. Then items came up, skins came up. So the classic e commerce inventory was not possible to feature all of these items restricted to the level you have and to the financial budget. So these were so many variables you had to check throughout the process within a second to allow the purchase. So this was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was really hard for our company to really understand. I was like, yeah, we are selling skins. They're like, what are skins? I'm just like, well, you have a character in the game and the character is wearing clothes. So you can change the clothes or the weapon or the armor, but you cannot buy everything because it depends on the level and your mana and everything. And they were just like, okay, Bilge, right, we got it. And we were talking about already about monthly active users, RPUs, RPPUs. These were different metrics. At software, you don't talk about RPPU, Alexander. So we had another level and metric. So people were asking when they were talking to us, Alexander. So the monthly active users, the average revenue per paying user, the average revenue per paying user, the non-paying users in localization. So there was a lot of statistical information going on and on and on to understand. Here's the big difference between software and games. In software, if someone buys it and uses or does not use it, it's not important. With games, if someone buys it, it is important. That's what we call today the adoption rate. In software, in 2021, people are talking about adoption. So if I buy from a company a software, the adoption rate has to be 80, 90, or 100% to ensure the success. And with games, it was the same, because if your adoption was not high enough, so the players signing in and playing the gap was too high, you were not performing. So just bringing 1 million users into the game was not the deal. You had to make them pay. You had to make them come back. You had to engage them, because these were the rates of a successful game. It is not just the revenue. At software, you look at the revenue by end of the month and you say, okay, from your operational data, okay, I invested this in marketing, I invested this here, and then this is what I got, and it's a plus. In video games, these metrics, the decision tree became huge. So, yeah, this is the economical part of video games that our company was not able to foresee to that extent, that there are so many different ways of distributing games and how to pay for games. And then when they could not understand that you can get a game for free and do not pay for it. So you pay per use. That was an extremely new model. Or that you, for example, charge before you send the game out. That's not possible. We had regulations, Alexander. At one point, I could charge a credit card today and ship the game in 4 months. But now this was different. Regulations came. Everything was regulated more and more and more. So the systems had to cater, on the one hand, not only the specifics of the game, and every single game was different. So we had free-to-play models that totally we did not expect to explode in Germany or in Europe that much. But with Facebook introducing or Zynga introducing to Facebook all these casual games for free, and you level up, that was kind of the world we found us in 2 to 3 years. The evolution of digital distribution took off the moment the video games decided, yes, digital works. And there were companies supporting the entire process. A lot of service providers came into the video games industry. If you remember, before the crash in 2008, you had a lot of payment companies, you had a lot of localization service companies, online marketing agencies running onto the video games industry to monetize as well there.
My head exploded again because you really think about that. In 7 years, the infrastructure that would effectively be the infrastructure that affects us today was created, installed, and then tweaked, exploded with the financial crisis. But it literally was led by video games, and I love what you said. Gamers were the loudest audience. That hasn't changed. So that's something that's there. And, Bilga, there's something that you said that at the very beginning that yes, you're in Germany. It's considered a mature market, but I mean, but you're trilingual or you're quadlingual. I think you speak like three or four languages. So the fact that you can communicate and you found yourself being in a place where your hard skills and your soft skills came together in technology. I'm curious about this because we one of the things that we do in Video Games Real Talk is that we do talk about the reality of being in this industry, and I just want to touch a bit about on this. That were you one of the only women in games at that time? I mean, let's because I really, I mean, I know the answer, but I want you to basically express it. Like, were there a lot of people like you, or what was that like?
So, the reality was mixed. It was very mixed. So, yes, there were women out there, mainly marketing positions. There were super geek girls out there in codes, but it was a very small portion, Alexander. I will give you an anecdote. So was it? I don't know. It was, I think, after Dice. Dice in Vegas, my dear. So, you know what happened there? So, we went to Dice. We talked about, business stuff, meeting companies, meeting friends, and everything. Then we went out in the evening for a party, okay? So, we go to one of these amazing hotels, and, we have a VIP area reserved because we are rock stars, right? We are in video games. So, I was sitting there and I was talking to my industry friends, and one of them just turned around, who's a very high level in one of the Korean companies, and he's just like, "Hey, Bilge, how does it feel to be the only woman here not a hooker?" I was just like,
Oh, gee,
wow. I was
you're
like,
kidding me.
I did not realize. First of all, I was shocked by the other fact that they are hookers. I'm just like, okay, not your friends. So I was like, too young to get it, I guess. I was like, okay. And
Oh
I
my
never,
god.
yeah, and I never saw myself like that. I just saw myself like being part of them. But on the other hand, now, being 40 years old, I understand it was totally different. Like when I hear people about talking about, we need more women in industries, we need more, need to be careful about how we express ourselves. That was not like that, Alexander. The only women on video game shows were half naked, showcasing games. Some of them were, so we have to be very clear that the AAA companies, the major companies, do have a lot of women also. Like Ubisoft is a quite big shop of a lot of leading women in that industry. But there were not much. It was a very small portion, especially in sales. No way. So I was sometimes treated like the girl. Sometimes I was treated like a business person. And sometimes they were just like, oh, ignoring me. So, it's hard. It's a white male dominated industry. And if you're not part of them, and if you don't have the background, and if you didn't play D&D when you were 4 years old, or didn't have 1 billion Magic the Gathering cards, you weren't a part of it. I mean, to be clear. So,
Yeah, I know, right? How dare you not play D&D when you were 3 and not, spend how dare you not have parents that can afford to buy you
correct.
1,000 Magic the Gathering cards? Such privilege. But I think that you hit on something that I think is important here, and I'm laughing because it's always so shocking to me at how the industry back then, and I want to say got better, but you know what? If we just look at the newspaper, if anyone reads a newspaper anymore, but if we look at the news, the rags that are out there, it makes you wonder if it has gotten better. But the fact that someone would have the tenacity to turn to you and make a comment like that, when that's just not something you do. I mean, you don't do these things. But I know at the time, and really this very kind of white nerdy dude that can't communicate worth a damn, that was so prevalent, and it is what really did shape the industry, and it's something where it was well one of those things. Like when we first met, actually, I actually really remember this meeting because I think there were 5 women in that room. And that
Pretty
was a
much.
huge room. And I was like, wow, let me not talk to another guy about something I really don't care to talk about. And that's when that
Alexander,
yeah.
I
Go
have
ahead.
been asked in meetings where Bilge is, and I was like, "I'm Bilge." They were expecting a guy. There is a very thin line between okay, understanding that the person in front of you is a woman and just don't care about it. We're here for business. Okay, so there were this part of people who accepted you as a woman in the business, so they went to the meetings with you, they talked to you, and it was fine. And then in the evenings, when things became a little bit more fun, they thought you're just there for their pure amusement. So you had to kind of also make sure that, guys, I'm here drinking with you, I'm having fun, but that's it. I'm your colleague. I'm as much an industry partner of yours than any other guy. But I have to tell you that here's the beautiful thing about the video games industry. Because I was traveling so much, Alex, I had my travel buddies somehow, and I was always hanging around with them. And kind of the industry at one point, because traveling so much and being everywhere, they kind of understood, okay, this girl is not someone to literally fuck around with. And I have to say it as blunt, and I know I shouldn't say it, but it is what it is. I had room key cards in my on my desk. I had, you know, people just groping me by passing on and just touching me. And I was like, what is just wrong?
Appreciate you being so open and honest about this because really, it comes down to the one thing, what you just said. You're there for business. You're not there to be the personal amusement device in the evening because I had a drink or someone had a drink. It's like that's not how this works. Now, this is something where you were in the industry and you're going through this and you're doing quite well as you're going through your career. And I'm curious here, like as you started to transcend, effectively watching the economy transform, not just the games economy, but really the entire economy going digital. What did you think? What started to take you towards where you are now? Because
Yeah.
you're doing super well. Were How did they get you out? Is what I'm trying to like. How did you get sucked into the world of technology again? What tempted you back out there?
So let me quickly explain you a little bit about my path. So I was headhunted by Hasbro at that time, and they took me out of my company, and they were just like, we want you to run Wizards of the Coast and D&D. And of course I was amazed again, because the chance to work for such an amazing brand is impossible. So I decided to do that. So I was overlooking the entire Eastern European market and distributors and trade market and everything they needed to hit that numbers, to make sure that D&D and Wizards of the Coast in general with Magic the Gathering is present. So that was my baby. And I was very, very happy. And at Hasbro, going from a very good NASDAQ company to a 4 billion company, that was another shift in my life. So I found myself, I woke up at Mondays at 4 a.m. I drove over to Brussels, meet my team, stay overnight, drive Tuesday evening back, go to the office or fly out to Russia. So that was pretty much my life. I got very, very exhausted. But what I learned with Wizards of the Coast, I mean, Wizards of the Coast is one of the most iconic brands we have. They're legendary, they're epic. The storytelling, the universes, the entire structure. And there I actually learned so much about video gaming culture and trade and math. That was a totally different calculation. This was beyond what I've learned in classes, Alexander. Wizards of the Coast is just a pure experience. It's the experience company. When you look at Neverwinter has been copied so many times and by other companies, by other studios, because the universe is such a beautiful, creative universe. So I went into a deep dive into that area. So I was talking in Russia, I was talking in Czech Republic, I was talking Poland, I was setting up the distribution system, the marketing system, and then we saw something that a lot of Magic the Gathering players actually they became older. They're around 50, 55 now. They don't play anymore. They don't go to the stores. They don't want to buy the cards. So Magic the Gathering Online was there. So you actually had your physical cards digitally. And it was a massive revenue driver because all these former players who are now financially solid, quite smart, they were just spending a lot of money into this type of games, the digital games where they were just collecting the cards. They could play a little bit as well, and they could, do so much more, but the experience was there. So even the most offline game you can think of got digital. I was quite exhausted. At one point, I was very, very exhausted, and I decided, this is great working with tabletop games, working, with Wizards of the Coast, being part of this massive machinery of Hasbro, being one of the biggest toy companies, biggest entertainment companies. And I was looking at it and I was like, this can't be all. This can't be all. Going from one tech company to a bigger toy company, I wanted to learn more, Alexander. In my personality, as you know, having technology, economics, and games, it was not easy for me. So I knew I had to leave Germany. So I went over to a startup in France, which was Scalefast. And they had a fantastic e-commerce system, and they were catering companies like Square Enix and some other great brands. Because, for example, figurines, you cannot sell figurines like that. Figurines are hyper items. People pay more, they pay a premium to get it. So we had to find a way that we can distribute figurines, for example, only 100 of them, in real time, count down by accepting payments, by sending out confirmations, and taking another bunch of people in without the interruption of the technology. So that was something really, really new. So I went to Paris, and Paris is it has a very vibrant startup community. And by the way, Scalefast is doing extremely great in the US right now. So I was figuring that I have to leave my country, my home country, Germany. So I went over to Paris. I went over to Turkey. I went to so many places to understand and take my knowledge. And really, I started a publishing company in Turkey. We were with Mario Bauman, who left wargaming at that time, and we both were just like, let's go to Turkey, let's go to these emerging markets. Emerging markets are the sexy markets. Take our knowledge, go to the emerging markets, and serve them. So we published an shooter game. We talked to our communities. Hey, how should the map look like in future? How do you want to have the designed map? So doing all of that, and I decided, not that I decided, actually, I was approached to consult people, to consult companies. So my first consultancy gig was for a former Atari executive who was working for a South Korean company. And he asked me if I could consult him, help him out, if the set of games they are serving could work in a specific market. So you know what? I looked at it and I was just like, this is what I want to do. I want to consult companies. I want to help companies to understand games and technology. So that was actually my very first gig, and that was again in Paris. And I went there. I listened to everything. I listened to their data. Alexander, data sheets you haven't seen in your life. There is the stock market overview, nothing. MAUs, DAOs, RPUs, RPPUs, engagement rates, marketing costs, and everything was just so massive. And I was capable to transfer that everything into an emerging market or another major market. And my recommendation was, don't go into that market. Because here is the thing, and this is what happened to Hasbro when they expanded to Eastern Europe. I don't know if you recognize, Hasbro has a lot of IPs that launch with movies. So if there is a Batman movie and the Batman toys are coming out, there's a huge hype. So everyone fights a toy. Everyone from the different companies, the Disneys and Hasbro's, they fight, for the right standees at the right place. But if a country doesn't have, or if a person doesn't have an experience with this brand, they don't care about the launch of the game or the launch of the movie. So their entire strategy of movie coming out, advertising did not work. And this is something we saw in the video games industry as well. If you don't have the experience with this type of game, be careful. And this is how the consultancy bits and pieces started. And I just stayed in my consultancy business for a couple of years, for 10 years actually, helping out brands, mentoring people through video games, understanding them, how could they can invest into that, what are the learnings you have to take out of it. So I did not even consult only video game companies. I also consulted people outside of the industry who wanted to get in, or companies who wanted to make their product work in that industry. At one point in my life, I decided I wanted to leave this consultancy area because the video games industry is quite big. Now, the size of the industry, the services we have in industry, look at just its payments, localization, marketing, production, outsourcing, co-production, it's huge. And actually, the industry got more intransparent than transparent. So what I did is actually I left the games industry and I joined Qualtrics. And Qualtrics is a technology company. I would say one of the most successful and most hyper-growth companies we have right now out there. And the idea about experience management is actually to gather all the information through different channels, actively and passively, transform it into a insight. And the video games industry always had this in the focus. You cannot launch a game without a community. You cannot go ahead and not take the opinion of your players. You need your players, whom you're going to test it. You cannot just test it on a QA level. As an economist, I understand that with the data existing right now, let's take the stock market, the financial market, okay, Alexander? If we were able mathematically to understand the stock movement, we would all be rich and sitting somewhere. It seems that the market has some disinformation. That's why we're investing, losing, and winning, and the average is okay for us. Experience data is actually collecting the information which we never had, the whys and the reasons. And by that, you actually know what the market is going to want from you in the future.
Video games has always been a sentiment meter. Your community will tell you if you suck. The games industry will tell you if you suck. I mean, we clearly have no problem making inappropriate comments, but we also do that on everything we do. So from that standpoint, let me ask you, when you're standing there at Qualtrics, which, shout out to Orem, Utah, where I'm from, because that's where they're from. So yeah, that's a side thing. The idea that you have a company that's effectively gathering sentiment. It's gathering the way people feel and then making actionable items against sentiment to help you understand how to run your business better, how to run your product or service better. Video games have been kind of doing it, but not all the way, because let's be honest here. We measure what we care about. And honestly, a lot of times in games, feeling was never really something we understood. We just knew, are you happy? Are you sad? Do you spend money? Now, do you see a lot of the things we do as games coming into that, or do you see a lot of things that you guys are doing going into games, or is it a mix?
I will tell you something, and it's so important to have people from different backgrounds and to understand and change the framework you're in. If you're just in one industry, you think in the system, you have to deprogram yourself to understand the boundaries, and this is not possible. So if you work for 20 years in one company, um, in technology, let's say only in technology, you have a very limited view. I will tell you something. I'm talking to a lot of big, massive brands in Germany. And there is one big thing called communities out there. Brands discovered for themselves that they have to create communities. It's not just sending marketing material out there, putting pictures here and there. They need to create communities around their top spenders. So let me give you an example. If you love a brand like Louis Vuitton, and if you are in their database and you buy a certain threshold of items from them and you are one of their top spenders, you're invited to great experiences with this brand, correct? So Louis Vuitton will invite you for 2, 3 days here and there and give you. Have you been there?
Everyone loves Louis. No, I haven't, but let's be clear. Louis, I mean, why not? Little
Why
LV
not?
will never hurt
Exactly.
anybody.
So they figured that they need to talk to their high spenders to understand what could be working or not. So these high spenders are not only the people you make money on, these are the people who will help you to guide your product through. So every big brand out there is all about communities. What do video games do? Before we launch a game, we build our community. We first push out the trailers, we announce, we build our community, we engage our community, we engage our users already. And we feed them to the peak of the launch, and that's a party. And this is something brands just discovered. So, you know, when we say it's not your consumer, he has to be your fanatic, that's video games. That's because it's experience, it's emotion, it's there, right? So all the big brands are now working on their communities. They want to create their communities with people they can talk to. They get great feedback. We already had that in video games. So it's now a marketing activity to create communities. The marketing activities, so there is a lot of common things between video games and big brands, how they approach with experience management their market. So another example would be, you know, when companies do an ROI calculation on marketing, you normally know, I know I spend $1 million on traffic, I get 1 million monthly active users on that or traffic, and I have a conversion rate of 8%. So it's a linear connection for us from a marketing perspective, right? I spend $1 million, I get 1 million visitors, and I make 8% of them I convert in spending money. Very linear. And what do people do? They push more money into, for example, acquisition of new users. But the point is that with X data, you can now understand exactly why these people are doing certain things. Why are they buying? So imagine if you're going to buy new shoes and you have to pay shipping fees, which is crazy. Who just pay in 2021 shipping fees? We all prime, right? It's like it has to be here now. Now. Everything, it's a now economy. So if someone is very upset and you talk to your customer in that moment where it matters, your product is fine, but we're talking about shipping costs. This is a side effect of your business. So I'm complaining, I'm saying, Alexander, I don't want to pay shipping fees. So a company managing experiences will provide this person when the next time they get on the website, hey, by the way, you get free discount. You don't pay shipping costs. That is experience management. That is the layer. And this is how marketing spends are changing. So the effect of what we had in video games, you would never talk about, I spent 1 million in user acquisition and I generated 80K revenue. In video games, they will ask you about the persona, monthly active users, average revenue per paying user, lifetime value. There are so many facts. So the lifetime of the consumer is now interesting, like in video games. In video games, you can watch your one player entirely through his entire lifetime value and see when he spent money, why he spent money. And then you build your groups out of there, your top spenders, your high rollers, your average spends, and those people who never spend. And video games always concentrate on the people who don't spend. They want to engage them. That's why they always bring new business models, right? That's why we have free to play, why it's so engaging. Getting the first item, then you get the second. I mean, look at Farmville. Farmville engaged everyone above 50. And everyone said this is not a group we can get through games. It does. It's engaging. The engagement rates are very high. Video game companies do know how to engage the user. This is now a question in enterprise. So just selling something is not enough. We need to engage. They need to come back because they love their experience. So now we're at the lifetime value of the customer.
No, and so you're hitting right on. Okay, so this is okay, cool. We're blowing the lid right open here because here's the reality. It's like the video games industry figured out, how do I hook you? How do I
Yes,
basically stretch your lifetime value? How do I maximize my profitability on you while at the same time making you the happiest, willing, complicit person you've ever known? Because you're smiling and you're like, take my money, take my money.
correct.
And so what we're doing now, like we're here now, and all of a sudden brands are like, wait, community? Wait, what do you mean? You mean if I identify a happy customer who is willing to sing my praise and willing to continually spend with me by me giving them some exclusivity on, let's call it a this invite thing that we're talking about from LV, that they're just going to keep coming back and it's going to lower my costs and boost my profits. So why did it take so long for the brands to come to this conclusion? I'm just curious, like, was it just technology that made everyone say this is it? Or is it that the people running the businesses now figured out, well, I'm a gamer, this is just like a game? I mean, what do you think happened that brought them to the wow, aha moment or the eureka moment, as we, like the cartoons say? Where's the eureka moment, Bilga? What happened?
That's a very difficult question. It depends on industry and it depends on product. But I very much see that people are understanding right now that we're in a phase where right now in a situation where everything is melting. Every B2B experience becomes a B2C experience. That's the prayer we always sing. It's the same experience. Even if I order something from my company, I want to have still a very personal experience, a very good experience. So I think that it pretty much came with a shift of new new people joining the companies, and the internationalization and the information exchange. So, you know, people are listening to the Netflix CEO or COO talking about something. So the world got more structured when it comes to data, to information exchange. So we exchanged more information. But then there is an entire group of young people joining these companies who are not only digital native, they are close digital. And then you have people coming from these bigger consulting companies and knowing that, okay, how do we extend lifetime value? And there are some smart people out there who understand that video games are hyper products, hyper scaling products. And they look into that. And what now is happening, the customer centricity, what we're promoting right now, is actually what video games always did. So how did that come together? I think, yes, technology is a big piece, because to process so much information, the processing power, even for Qualtrics, wasn't there a couple of years ago. And now they have a platform which is really enabling things. But then we are thinking, we are connecting more tools, Alexander. You had one ERP tool, you had one HR tool, you had here islands, a lot of islands. And now we're coming to the point where we understand that connected experiences are important. I need data from all the system to get a full picture. And this data has to be analyzed, but it cannot be analyzed by you and me, Alexander. It has to be analyzed by a system, by a machine, by machine learning. It has to be analyzed through a through driver analysis to understand, what do I need to do to achieve the following system. So we are modeling. The framework was small. It was captured in one area, and by connecting technology, connecting systems, talking to each other, now you have an Salesforce is a quite, it's a CRM, right? It's an open technology. You can develop widgets, you can do things. People are talking, people are connecting. It's more about connecting the dots, and I think this is what happened.
Do you think that the world woke up and realized, like, especially the brands, did they realize, like, if we gamify the hell out of this, this will help us? Like, because that's what, like, as you were just talking, I'm basically taking Bilga in 2000, seeing and helping lay down the digital infrastructure around the world to basically create digital commerce, to then Bilga now, knowing what she did then, now looking around and seeing that the brands are like, can we please engage our customer, and that they're like, wait a second, these video games people, they might know something here, and what they know we need. And based on where you're at now, where you sit in your position, how much gaming stuff is coming up now? Because it sounds like, and I mean, even from our own experience, there's a lot. So I'm just curious, what are you
Yeah,
seeing on your end with all the brands and all the companies? What's happening on that end?
my perspective, what I'm seeing, but that is not related to my job. That is just observing the industry and reading about the companies opening up about experiences, but not about experience management. I'm not talking about experience management here. I'm talking about the actual understanding, because before I explain that, let me roll back one level. Companies only had one way in the 80s and 90s to market, right? It was being on Vogue or on whatever medium and on TV. That was taken from them. The internet came and they were just, okay, let's put digital ads up. Then social media came, influencers came, creators came. And the entire audience is everywhere in the world. And I think the brands recognized the classic way of marketing doesn't work. The classic way of engagement with the customer doesn't work. We were just consuming whatever the brands gave us. And now it changed. Now brands are working, for example, with influencers or creators because they want to reach their community. They want to reach the Kim Kardashian community, the couple of million followers, or they want to, find a way to get to the customer closer. And now they recognize actually that they lost the game, in my opinion, because we are expecting great experiences. This is why we follow an influencer Instagram, because there are so many from a market insight perspective. If I look at Kim Kardashian or whomever you want to take as an influencer, or Gigi Hadid, there are a couple of points I like about them. So I follow them, right? And I want to become like them. So if they show a great, fabulous bag, I think having such a bag makes me closer to my persona I want to become or be. So that is not working. It's not working like that. So you have to provide, it's not, the spillover effect that they're successful doesn't change my success by holding this bag. No. Now they understood they need to provide experiences. So the big change and shift will happen in marketing. The marketeers will change. And everyone who's not very retarded saw a game trailer and was blown away, or saw the latest movies, was blown away, like the environments, the emotions delivered, and how much people are fanatic and brand ambassadors. They recognize that. And here's the thing, the more you know about your customer, Alexander, the more you have to cater. That's the bad part about it. So I know that let's talk about the perfect world. I have access to all the information in this world. I would need to market every single person differently. But here's the thing with a person who knows you, not a brand, but your friend. So if you recommend me a cool journaling app, I will not look at the price. I will not look at the reviews. I will buy it, right? I will buy it. So what I'm saying here is that the value of someone being an ambassador and vouching for something by using it and being real about it, because I know Alexander journals a lot, he likes that. So you're, for me, a credible person. This is not what we have for creators and influencers. So the brands will need to use video game technology to provide experiences, because the marketing strategy right now using an influencer to create an experience through their reputation doesn't work, because guess what? They have a real life and they're not perfect. So the reputation lacks all the time. So I see here the ability to market everyone separately through virtual worlds. I mean, we have seen in Instagram, we have CGI influencers with millions of followers. They don't exist, Alexander. They're just putting pictures up, and people are following them. And there is even a research saying that millennials and Gen Zs find them authentic. They are authentic because they're not vouching for, losing weight in the morning, and they just, go out and party and eat and do whatever in the evening. So the authenticity is given with CGI.
Okay, so let me ask you this question because we're 40, so it's like millennials, zennials. For some of us desperately trying to grip to Gen Z, we're not. But let me just ask a question here. Was it ever about a person as much it is about the idea? Because when I'm hearing you talk, it's like the reason you can sell me with a digital character isn't that I think I'm a digital character. I really don't care about the digital character, but the digital character represents an idea, a position, a place, a aspirational, inspirational. Do you see that because of the way marketing has changed and the fact that, to your point, your creator, your influencer, they're going to get old too, and you know what? They're going to go away. That you need something that you can control as a brand. Is this what you think maybe the brands are latching onto? They're like, you know what? We don't need to have human beings when we can have the ideas that can be populated by things that we can then ultimately convey and control. Do you think that's one of the reasons why they're being attracted to it?
I think you're right, and there are 3 points to it. First of all, when I look at product development, in product development, there is a lot of video game technology used, because we understand right now that the future ahead of us, the next 10 years, will not be like the last 10 years. So we know that we will not be able to go to a car dealer and take a look at their car and have the experience. So we need fabulous technology to deliver that message to us and to deliver that feeling. You know, I can smell the new car, but I know how the leather feels and if I can deliver that experience. So, this is why a lot of engineering companies, especially in the automotive sector, are using Unreal Engine to showcase their car in the best way possible. It looks beyond real, it looks like a dream. You want to jump into that and you live your childhood fantasies the moment you see that model car. I was totally blown away when I saw that. I was just like, you did it on Unreal, right? And they're just like, yeah, we did it on Unreal Engine, because there is nothing comparable out there. And so from a product development and product showcasing perspective, yes, Alexander, video games industry is the non-plus of creativity, and accordingly their technology. There is nothing you can't do on Unreal.
Very true. So then, where do you then see this going? Because I'm out there, we have brands listening, we have enterprise companies listening. They want tips. what would you advise them? What would you tell them? What do they need to do? How should they think about this situation that they're finding themselves in?
I think that every brand will become a separate world perceived differently by the consumers. And the only way to showcase everywhere is to over exceed the expectation. That is what games is all about. Video games marketing, video games approaches over exceed the expectation. That is how video games operate. So I would, you know what, I would recommend anyone to go into a video games company, look at how they work, how is production set up. We're talking about agile. Agile is not a system of working, even though you have the agile coach who is a happiness manager. Agile was there because of, video game companies applied agile 30 years ago because there was no other way to cope with the progress of game development, which is peaking. There are different resources you need. It's such a difficult planning on talent that you have to be agile as a video game company. Every video game company is agile. So, first of all, go look how they work, look how they communicate. So, that is something I would recommend. Take a look at a game company, talk to one of the leading game companies, talk to someone like you, and see how that works. On the second level, take a look at the latest games, take a look at Cyberpunk. What is Cyberpunk? Is it a movie? Is it a movie trailer? Is it a game? What is it? It is real. It is there. You can play the game 5 times with 5 different angles, with 5 different experiences. If they understand what they see there, I think they will, every brand will go to video game companies. They will use video game technology because why not? I can deliver the best experience from a visual perspective, the worlds I can build. Why do I need to show always when I'm looking at car commercials? Nothing is more boring than that, even though the product is the most exciting product. I don't want to see how they browse through South France and, in the Cambria, I'm like, ha ha ha, life is so good. You know what? Become that fast company you wanted to become. Look in video game technology, look in how you market. And actually, you don't need to invent everything. Video game technology allows you to create prototypes of your product, talk to your audience, get a feeling how your product works. What is your idea? Give people the freedom to become creative again. This is what I would recommend. And this is why I would recommend to look at companies, who do that. The creativity you have in a video game company is unbelievable. The resources, corporate call their people resources. In games, we call them talents because we respect what they do. We respect their creativity and we know how hard it is. So we need to get back creativity into brands. And creativity was very expensive because you had to produce, you had to test, you had to price point. It was such a long process. But when you use video game technology, you don't need to develop this shirt. There is no need to it. It's CGI, Alexander. I can have a fabulous shirt out there, a new line, a very creative line. Your visual will not be different from the realistic one. You can become so much more agile in production, so much more agile in marketing by reacting immediately and fast. So both worlds are melting. And when we look at how technology is working, everything is going cloud now. 2021 is the cloud year. Everything has to go cloud. Everyone is investing into their cloud and they're connecting the tools and bits and pieces. So when you're doing that, don't forget that the key pieces of your business, your product, anything from product development, I would very much recommend everyone to look into video games, how video games are developed from the creative moment over to the final product that is more realistic than anything you can imagine. So brands can become actually more creative, agile, and they can talk faster to their consumers. And there is this metaverse we're always thinking of because everything is melting now together. Do I need to have a real model? Do I need to have real products? Isn't it more about the mission and vision of the company that I want to put out there? So I don't see any need anymore for physical meetings unless it's my friend and I want to really talk to you. But I can look at a collection virtually and the experience. And here's the one big thing, Alexander. People talk right now in 2021 about custom experience, but it's their perspective on the customer. When companies will be done with the custom experience, which is their view on the customer from, from visit to sale and after sales, they will look at the journey of the customer in general from the customer perspective. So if I buy an iPhone, I should be able to come. I'm expecting from my services that they know. If you buy an iPhone, you want to buy a nice phone case, you want to buy this, you want to buy these services. So I will be marketed differently. So if you apply this in the long term, not in the next 5 years, but in the next 5 to 10 years, we're talking about new economical dynamics opened up through that. Because I now understand the customer experience with my brand, but now I want to understand my customer. So why, if you buy a Peloton, you're not done with a Peloton, Alexander. You're changing your lifestyle. You want to become healthy. You go to keto. You want a new gear. I want to be marketed upon my needs, upon the things I love, I'm passionate about. It doesn't end with the product. My journey is not ending there. And in the next 5 to 10 years, people will understand this, and brands will see the opportunities to cooperate. So the arbitrage we have in the markets right now, hyper winners because they just landed a good product and a high price point, that will not be existing anymore, because the more we talk to the brands, the more the brands talk to their customer and understanding more. But here's the thing, there will be technologies out there connecting every dot you had with the different brands, and they will create a persona around you. So you will not be only Alexander, CEO of Streamline, having 2 kids and a wife and living in Vegas. They will know every bit and piece of you. You will be marketed in a different way. And don't you even think that this will happen through the media you are looking at right now? No. There will be new platforms and technologies carrying you into the world of the person you want to become and market you on all the items you need to achieve that. And for that, you need virtual worlds, you need avatars, and you need messaging. So if you ask me, that will be happen latest in 10 years. We have the brands already doing it right now.
I mean, this is just so fascinating because it's like meta of a meta of a meta. You literally described Inception to me.
Yeah.
Inception through technology, through gaming, through creativity, through commerce. Now, Bilga, you sit at the intersection of all these things. I mean, you're one of the few people I know that has been saying this out loud for a long time. So, our listeners out there, I'm sure they're going to want to get a hold of you. How can people reach you? How can they follow you? Shout out your social tags, your websites, because I'm sure, girl, there are going to be a lot of people that want to talk to you. So, how can they do that?
They can definitely reach me through my LinkedIn. It's Bilge Alexia. And through my website, it's also bilgealexia.com for sure. I'm happy to talk to people and really explain more about the metaverse and the craziness of this upcoming new melting world.
Do you tweet? Are you a Twitter user? I mean, can I hit you up on Twitter, or no? Are you like, I don't know about this,
You know
How are you
what?
on there?
I wasn't so good, but I'm coming up with that again because I figured that I love connecting with people again here now after a year of home office. So yeah, it's Bilge Alexia at Twitter.
I love it. I love it. Bilga, honestly, we're going to have you back on the show because we just literally scraped the iceberg. And I know when you and I speak, we speak for like 3 hours at a time. So I think there's like 3 shows we're going to have on this because, I mean, it's just fascinating. I think one of the main things what I absolutely love about talking with you is how cerebral it is and how it is all encompassing. It's culture, it's economy, it's technology, but moreover, it's a vision. And I think this is something that is so hard for a lot of people to just grasp in general, because we're talking about future fantastic stuff. So, I want to ask on a final note, what do you tell, women, minorities, diverse people who don't always think they can get into these fields? What advice would you have for them? Because, obviously you did it. So, what would you point for people that want to follow and say, "Hey, how do I get into this?"
So first of all, I think it's really important to be a true self. That's really key. Just do what you love. That's the first thing. And talk to people. If you want to join a specific company, a specific industry, reach out to them. Tell them your story. Tell them your personal story. People are listening. And you want to know what I think that is something changed between, in the 2000s now. Hit up someone you really love and you adore and you respect in the industry and say, hey, would you mentor me? Would you give me some tips? You have to be active and you have to be persistent and you have to work hard, but you will achieve it. You will have a lot of success.
Bilga, honestly, Thank you so much for coming on to the show and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us, and of course, your story. Everyone out there, this comes to a wrap up of Video Games Real Talk with Alexander Fernandez and Stefan Baier. We appreciate you listening to us. You can hit us up on Twitter. I am at StarveUp, or you can find us on Video Games Real Talk. Some exciting news that is coming. The website for Video Games Real Talk is nearly completed, where you will be able to get on there and effectively comment, connect with people, and of course, talk to us about what's going on. As always, if you have any comments, questions, curiosities, or feel like throwing something to us, feel free to do so. We appreciate your listening. And as always, thank you for taking part on the show. Bilge, thank you again, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Alex.